Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Intel Extreme Masters live, wait for it, from New York City. Such a good crowd, glad to be back in the US for the first time in 2 years. It's back at the Intel Extreme Masters here, right here in the heart of New York at the Jacob Javits Center for Comic-Con. We've already had 3 fantastic games, we've got our 4th coming up in just a moment. Before we get there though, let's check in with the brackets and show you exactly what's happened with all of our scores so far. As you can see on your screen right now, we've just seen San go through Hack with a stunning 2-0 victory. Hack does get another chance in the lower bracket though, but there is one other game being played right now, SWS versus Snoot, and that is also going to be a tough game for the man from Norway to come through. That game will also decide a little bit later on who goes through to the last 16. If you're not familiar with the setup, tomorrow we'll have 16 players through to the group stages, all playing off in groups A through to D, and then eventually moving on towards the quarterfinal, semis, and grand final. Let's take a look at our bracket B as well. We've had a simultaneous bracket going on right now, and as you can see, Life coming through against Puck, and DongRaeGu beating the local man, Suppy, 2-0, which leaves us with the last 2 men to introduce you for our 2nd final in a row. So, ladies and gentlemen, please make some noise for our 2 players fighting for a position in the last 16. Put your hands together for DongRaeGu and Life. I've got a feeling this one's going to be a bit special. It doesn't come along too often, but this is a classic matchup of a previous champion at the IEM and a man who has won more titles than you can shake a stick at. It's time to go over to our commentary team for this one, for Life versus DongRaeGu. Guys, take it away and enjoy.
Thanks very much, Paul. Welcome to the caster's desk for what is sure to be a very cool Zerg versus Zerg. These two have such pedigree behind them. My name's Kyle Laris, alongside Nathanius for the first ever time. How are you doing, man?
Not bad, not bad. Loving New York. We just had a great series between San and Hack here, and Zerg versus Zerg coming up next.
Yep, it's going to be a good one. It really is going to be a good one. Life and DongRaeGu, they've met each other once or twice in the past. Admittedly, they were in Wings of Liberty, but one only need think back to Life versus DongRaeGu in the finals of Iron Squid 2, where Life was down 3 games and then brought it all the way back in a best of 7 to 4 games to 3. It's mind-blowingly strong.
Well, you know, you gotta just imagine the mental position of those series and the kind of impact that leaves on you as a player afterwards, especially, you know, on the other side for DRG, having been in such a good position. So you can definitely expect these guys to be going at each other's throats for this Zerg versus Zerg matchup. Yeah,
it's going to be a good one. I'm really looking forward to this one. We have Derelict Watcher and then Polar Knight removed. A lot of people just in general, even if it is a mirror matchup, are just really not favoring Polar Knight too much. It can create some odd situations, especially in ZVZ where your natural on Polar Knight has so much room behind it. If you get into Mutalist versus Mutalist situations, being able to maneuver around in those areas is quite a tough one.
Yeah, even the main base, it's one of those maps that just, it's not necessarily the worst map in the pool, but it often finds itself vetoed for those reasons. So we have Belshir, Vestige, Yansu, and Frost. I think all pretty solid maps for ZVZ.
Yeah, not too bad. It's no surprise that we start things off on Belshir Vestige, oftentimes than not, in all of these series that we've been having so far. And, you know, I am looking forward to this because there is history here. Both of them are very, very well-versed in ZVZ. We've seen DongRaeGu already, all he's had to play is ZVZ up until this point. And then he goes up against another Zerg. Admittedly, a little bit of step up. You get Sasquatch, Suppy, and then there's like Life, kind of really up there. But then Life himself, he's no stranger to the matchup.
Yeah, these guys are all pretty much, these were the top players, especially back in Wings of Liberty. DongRaeGu, quite dominant for a long time, taking MLGs, taking basically victories left and right in Premier tournaments, and then kind of fell off for a little bit. Life kind of stepped up, so had that big space of reign for himself, and well now, they're both kind of known for aggressive play. This could be a very action-packed ZVZ as well.
It really could be. It really could be. I'm curious to see how they're going to approach it, you know, what they're going to be doing going into these games. Again, there is obviously the opportunity to go for a lot of Muta versus Muta play. We do see that a lot. But as we saw prior with DongRaeGu's focus, moving over to the Roaches and then the Infestors as well, that's certainly something that can put a dent in your side. And we saw Sasquatch try and deal with it with an interesting kind of Roach Baneling mix, but it really wasn't getting there. DongRaeGu was reading his opponents really, really well.
Yeah, he showed a good variety of strategy as well. You know, that in particular, I believe the Belshear game, he made the scout that Sasquatch had taken a very late gas, and he's one of those players that says, hey, there's an opening here, let's get the speedlings out, let's just kill him really quickly. It worked out very well. And then, of course, in that second map, as you said, dealt very well with the Roaches, and it's very difficult in Zerg versus Zerg to pick the right time to move from Roaches into something like Hydralisks or into Infestors, because it's a timing where you want to move that supply up, but then if your opponent has more Roaches, you can get into some really awkward positions.
Yeah, definitely, and that's pretty much what we ended up seeing in game number 2, right? Unfortunately, Sasquatch having kind of cornered himself into a very, very disadvantageous position and really not having the economy to back it up. There was just nothing for him to do. He tried to transition on, but it was all too little too late. And that's the one thing that does kind of define DongRaeGu. That ability to just read anything he's given and exploit it to the fullest. And in ZVZ, prime territory to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, especially you have that mirror matchup. You know exactly what your opponent has available to him. Belshear Vestige is one of those linear maps. There's not a lot of space outside of it, very narrow. I don't think the Mutalists play quite as strong a say on a map like Polar Knight or even Yansu in that regard. There's a lot more space around the main bases on those maps. But as far as these matches go, how do you feel about the aggression coming out of them? Because I feel like that's what this series could just be about, is just the back and forth.
It's actually a good point that you bring up, because both of these players are really able to bring that really high-octane, like, Ling Baneling aggression, maybe even just skipping Banelings completely and just going for straight Lings very, very early, like even earlier pools, something like that. We've seen both Life and DongRaeGu do it in the past. Life's done it to great success. DongRaeGu, as of late, not so much. We saw him actually fall in some ZVZs, which I'm trying to peg. But aside from the ones that I can't peg, we've seen Life have more success with earlier pulls and stuff like that. So maybe he mixes it in.
Yeah, I think Life's Zerglings is just all that needs to be said. He's got incredible control with those early game units, so it's a big threat you have to watch out for, especially on the part of DRG, because aside from just full out all-in Zerg aggression, he's one of those players that can go in with the run-bys. We even saw DRG pull some of those Roach run-bys versus Sasquatch in their match, so they'll be constantly looking for areas to dig in at each other.
Yeah.
And that's really what ZVZ can really come down to. It's who can pick off more here and there, since keeping those drone counts even is so difficult to do in the early phases.
Yeah, you need just small incremental advantages, as you do in any mirror matchup, but it's very important in ZVZ. It's weird how ZVZ works in general, because the lava becomes even more of a strong commodity and strong currency, more so than anything, whilst your obviously minerals and gas are still there. And you get into really strange situations where we even saw. Let's just take a step back to game number 2 between Sasquatch and DongRaeGu, where he makes 6 Lings. Sasquatch makes 6 Lings, sends them across the map. Now, when you get the reaction out of DongRaeGu, who only made 4 Lings, he was, Sasquatch was anticipating forcing a little bit more. Just that one lava's worth of Lings is a bit of a difference. You get that extra drone out, great, you're flying. It's like very, very small things, but very important.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It was a cool way that you mentioned that, because on that map, it's a little bit easier to abuse the vision. On Belshear Vestige, it's kind of dead set. We're going to send those Overlords to watch for anything like those early Zerglings. So I think the really interesting point that you bring up with that is who's going to take those risks earlier on in this series? Which player is going to be more likely to try for something like an early pool or investing more into those early Zerglings? I guess that's the real question, because I really think either of these guys, they're both great in the macro game, but they both love to get aggressive when they can. That's
ZVZ, man. That is ZVZ for you. We get some weird and wacky situations. There was even, I think it was TLO versus Slivko, where we had Ultralist Baneling going up against like mass swarm hosts, and then the Banelings all just explode above the swarm host without detection. You just get some odd, weird things going on in later stages. I don't think we'll see this between Life and DongRaeGu. I think they'll conform to normality with Roaches, etc. But now, guys, before we get into this game, we can send it over to TLO, in fact, with Red Eye.
Yes, thank you very much. We've plonked ourselves down in the crowd to enjoy this one. This man's going to particularly enjoy it. He's looking forward to it a lot. TLO, great to have you out here in New York, as ever. Looking forward to tomorrow's group stage. But first of all, this game's going to be a good one.
Yeah, definitely. I really enjoy CVC, even though you said earlier you don't really, but DongRaeGu versus Life is basically a treat. Life is my favorite player out of everybody. and I'm looking forward to see and maybe learn from him.
Learn as well, I like that. So what did you make of the comments they were just making about the Slivko game?
Well, I was kind of trying a style I didn't really master yet.
Come on, man, you're always trying a new style.
Well, I'm just trying to keep up with, whatever's going on and decide whatever is most suitable for the current style of play. But it's definitely gonna, I'm gonna refine it for the future. So Killaris is gonna be more happy about that than he made it sound.
All right, so looking ahead to the group stage tomorrow, what's your view on that?
I'm pretty confident. I think I'm going in here with very little pressure. It's very unlikely that I'm still gonna qualify for BlizzCon. People did the math, and basically, even if I win this tournament, it's only a 1% chance I'm still going to qualify. So there's really not much pressure going on for me, and I think that's going to help me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because there's other players here who, again, they're not realistically looking at BlizzCon points anymore. They're literally here to win the tournament.
Yeah.
So, it makes it a little bit easier, but is there anyone in there you look at and you go, oh, I really don't want to meet them too early?
No, really. I don't really think in terms of that anymore. It's important to just think of everybody as very human and very beatable.
And final question before we go back to our commentary team. 2013 has actually been a unique year so far. I don't know whether you're aware of this, but every single major tournament this year has been won by a Korean. It sounds almost like that's what's always going to happen, isn't it? But last year we still had a few people that won some big tournaments. When is the first foreigner going to win a tournament, a major this year?
Maybe it's not going to happen this year, but 2014 is looking pretty bright for a lot of Zerg Team Liquid players, I think. Both Snoot and Red, they're improving rapidly, and I think I'm not going to be falling behind, so look out for that.
Yeah, make sure you follow him, @LiquidRet. Old joke, never dies. Talk about Red for a second. All killed the other night as well. Brilliant, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really happy to see Red doing better and better. He has an incredibly positive mindset, and we are actually going to be training together very, close together for DreamHack Winter, probably.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much, and good luck tomorrow, and best of luck with the tournament as well. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
All right, let's go back to our commentators for our second final. This one's going to be a cracker. It's Life versus DRG.
Thanks, guys. Of all the people that he had to interview after I'd said that, darn. Oh, well. TLO.
Karma.
I love that guy.
Instant karma right
Instant karma. Absolutely instant. All right, anyway, we have Life versus DongRaeGu. This is Life. This is the guy that has 5 championships under his belt and a lot of high finishes as well. One most recently at DreamHack Bucharest.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
He's a monster, and you see the age tag. He's only 16. Very, very powerful opponent. And here's DongRaeGu sporting easily the classiest hat.
I did not expect this of him coming into this tournament. It's a different style that we haven't seen much from DongRaeGu, but it's here and it's present.
It's a bold move. We'll have to see if it works out for him.
Yeah, it could backfire. We'll have to see. But now, guys, we can get into game number 1 here between Life and DongRaeGu. Who is going to advance on to the group stages tomorrow? 2 titans of Zerg at the very peak of their performance, were arguably the best Zergs in the world. But now, spawning down to the bottom right-hand corner here, as our blue Zerg, representing StarTale as well as Korea. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Life.
There he is, ready to go at it.
Ready to go, man. He's going to knock DongRaeGu's head off if he's not careful. Spawning up to the top left-hand corner are Red Zerg, representing MVP as well as Korea. Give it up for DongRaeGu.
It is a hat. I love it. The glasses.
I'm so confused.
It works so well together.
Do they?
Not really. It's Belshir Vestige. We kind of talked about this map. Long, thin, nothing really spectacular about it, but it's one of the maps that's been around probably the longest out of the current pool of players. Very comfortable with it, very familiar. And as far as the overall strategies go, we're not seeing any ridiculously early aggression, no super crazy fast pools. It's just another standard ZVZ, both players not taking any risks.
Yeah, DongRaeGu going to get in what one would consider the short end of the straw, going 14 spawning pool against what we have of a normal hatchery timing over the other side here for DongRaeGu. Sorry, actually, DongRaeGu getting the better end of it. The colors were a bit mixed up there. But aside from that, Life, with that spawning pool, with the extra ability to have Zerglings out early, that gives us, again, those Life Zerglings that can cause a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, and we already see a little bit of an interesting play from DRG. He's a teensy little bit of greed. He's feeling comfortable, not worried about anything like a fast pool. The hatchery, then the gas, then his spawning pool gives him a really nice timing to get his Zergling speed up if he wants to get aggressive or even just play defensively against any two-base play that Life could bring. But it does give DRG that earlier option to get on the aggressive side, and I don't think it's really something that we're going to see as far as like roaches go, but speedlings are something that both of these guys love.
Yeah, speedlings, it's always nice to even have, just as that insurance policy, as you mentioned, very, very important. But as you can see here, Life with no Vespene gas geysers, so probably looking to take double gas geysers eventually and then be able to deal with his opponent in any way, shape, or form like that. Whilst we have DongRaeGu, who does have that gas and can start speed, and there we go.
Overlord sees this for Life. He knows exactly what's going on. He can see that the gas still being mined fully, so DRG will be able to get up a Baneling nest pretty soon if he wants to as well for any type of follow-up aggression. But an interesting point that you bring up, Life playing without the gas, it's kind of funny because Sasquatch did a similar opening and then took the gas as soon as the scouting Overlord was gone and went for sort of a fake out fast gas, but he's still not taking it. There's that potential he could just drone up, get some evolution chambers, go for some roach play, a little bit of lings poking around here, but nothing really that crazy.
And what's interesting about Life's build is that with the spawning pool being at the timing that it was, whilst we have all these lings trying to run around in circles, not really doing a whole lot trying to get a drone, with that build, DongRaeGu went in with the Overlord. He saw the spawning pool and realizes, you know, oh, well, that's a particular timing that I know. Then the Queen could have been out to kill that Overlord and try and spawn it. And that's why DongRaeGu was not able to go in and see both of those gas timings. So he didn't really allow himself the same opening that he did against Sasquatch on this map.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting the way that he's just kind of dynamically changing the way that he opens versus his opponent as far as the scouting goes. Lings get picked off, and I don't think he got the vision of the right geyser.
No.
He did confirm there was, I think is that just outside the vision maybe?
He didn't see the right one, basically, and that one went down after they'd left. So it's just the double gas timings here, but that, you know, gives us the stance that DongRaeGu was still kind of in the dark about what his opponent was doing. Although he could have potentially read into it and said, oh, well, the spawning pool wasn't wearing away, maybe you didn't have speed out yourself, but that was a minor detail there. As DongRaeGu, he's happy to go up to this third base, and that's relatively quick there.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way that DongRaeGu's been playing this out. He's now sending a few lings across the map, but he kept mining that gas. He now has 200 of it in the bank. No evolution chambers just yet. I'm wondering if we're just going to see him go straight to his lair tech with maybe one evolution chamber. But Life, on the other hand, doing that play, getting his double evolution chamber, getting the roach horn, he can wall off with the queens, and this is a very nice, safe defensive setup versus the Zerglings that DongRaeGu has.
Oh yeah, I love this. Whoop, although does get a creep tumor in the end, so not too bad for himself. But yeah, I absolutely adore the structure positioning that we're seeing from Life there, and he has not seen that third base. So that's a slight overstep there by Life. Really needs to spot that out, because if he did, there's the potential that Life could have, you know, made a few units, tried to go over there, do some harassment to it. That's generally what you would see in ZVZ. And still, DongRaeGu does not know too much about his opponent's main.
Yeah, Life now putting out 10 roaches. And this is, I feel like we're on the brink here of him trying to put on a little bit of pressure or take his third base with this, because he's also securing the rest of his gas. DongRaeGu now taking his lair as well as the Baneling nest. I feel like there was a little bit of indecisiveness with that lack of scouting information, as you had pointed out earlier. He banked up a lot of this gas. We didn't really see him make that commitment to any type of aggression or even really early tech, because it seems to be par for the course versus Life, who's also getting his lair.
Well, he sees a few roaches, has to back up with those Zerglings, and now throws down his own roach warrior himself, does DongRaeGu. So, +1 weapons on the way for Life, and if he's going to commit fully to a later stage of the game, then he is going to go for that carapace as well. So double upgrades could be on the way for Life very soon. But these roaches, they cause an annoyance. There has to be a lot of Zerglings produced here for DongRaeGu that he might have not necessarily wanted to when he's going into that layer position.
Yeah, he's being forced to spend a lot of the larvae on things that aren't drones, and now getting a decent surround on these roaches, but they're continuing to just press up here, and I feel like with these Banelings, he should have enough to hold this off.
Yeah, this will eventually get cleaned up, and nice spread, though, of the roaches. Those Banelings, nowhere near as efficient as they could have been, but Life making, you know, what he can of the situation, just trying to soak up what he can.
Yeah, and it feels like it's still relatively even. That third base finished up so much earlier for DongRaeGu, but that shove forced so many lings to be produced, couldn't quite drone it up.
He now spots the third base, and that's a little bit of a surprise there for Life. DongRaeGu here, though, trying to deny this third, and this is kind of what I was expecting to see from Life, if he'd have seen that third base, but it's not the case. Now DongRaeGu's taking the initiative. Doesn't get too much done with those, he's trying to sneak past, but ooh, a nice block there by Life.
Yeah, nice job keeping that wall held together. And we see the gas already being taken at this third base for DongRaeGu. Both players kind of look like they're going into the same setup, though. Just the Roaches, we're not seeing anything along the lines of Aspire, and I don't even think we have no Hydralisk tech, so it could just be pure Roach, a little bit reminiscent of Sasquatch versus DongRaeGu game number 2, and it's going to come down to that balance of who can squeeze out the drones, who can get the Roaches out. We see the Overseer now coming in for life. He's going to get a little bit more scouting information, but nothing really unusual happening.
Yeah, both players really know just what each other are up to. They both see the double evolution chambers. They both see the Roach Warren. Roach is coming out as well. So almost identical setups here from each other. And the drones aren't too far off one another either. Getting a queen is nice, but he still has a few backup queens. Having at least 3 queens on the map, being able to keep those lava injects going is very, very important. If you go down a single queen and you don't have equal lava injects, that's scary times in the mid game.
I mean, at this point, the larva is almost worth as much as the minerals or the gas.
Exactly.
It's that third resource of Zerg versus Zerg, being able to actually spend that money and put out the units. As these Roaches do a little bit of a shove, that creep spread going along, we see the first tech choice, though, the later tech stage. They have that Infestation Pit on the way for DongRaeGu. He wants to make that switch into potentially Infestors much earlier than his opponent.
It's funny how we actually see the minimap, because DongRaeGu, if you look at his vision, look at his overlords on his side of the map. It's almost as if it's like overlords of like creep tumors kind of paced forwards and positioned. But, you know, he's got a lot of vision over his side of the map without really having the mobility, whilst we have, obviously, this Overseer coming in and trying to see what it can see itself. And it's Infestation Pit for both players. So we're going to have Roach Infestor versus good old Roach Infestor. This is very Wings of Liberty.
Yeah, this is one of those setups where the engagements will be largely determined by positioning, who can get the fungals, where they can get the fungals, and also a little bit by the upgrades. This +2 Carapace starting up just a couple of seconds earlier for life, not quite yet starting for DongRaeGu. Even something that small can make a big difference when it's just Roaches fighting against each other.
It's so funny as well that we talked about the final of Iron Squid 2, because this setup was like every single game of that series. Every single game. Just Roach Infestor versus Roach Infestor. And, you know, there's very few players on the planet that do it better than these two. So we're gonna see a really good ZVZ unfold once the engagements start flying.
Yeah, it's kind of neat to see them sticking to that, though. Both players looking and saying, well, you're doing the same thing as me, but I'm confident enough that I'm better than you at it. Well, that's it. It's like they've shook in a gentleman's agreement to just not deviate, not throw any curveballs there. But we do have the fourth base is trying to be established, and both players don't seem too much hitch. There's Zerglings that can come up here and spot this, but life is there to protect it.
This +2 Carapace is scaring me a little bit. It's getting a little bit later here for DongRaeGu, as he just hasn't started it yet at all. Of course, he has the slight supply advantage, but when it gets to upgrades and your opponent eventually wants to transition onto Hive and they get 3-3 going whilst you're still on like 2-1 or anything, it's a scary spot to be in. So I would like to see DongRaeGu maybe start that Carapace soon.
Yeah, it's actually one of those things that makes a really big difference.
There we go.
Now we finally have the Infestors coming out, though, so the fungal growth will become a big part of this game. And I'm mostly wondering, so the +2 Carapace has started up. We're seeing a couple defensive Spine Crawlers thrown up for life. He's continuing to move around with his Overseer, getting the scouting information. Both players finishing up their fourth bases a little bit earlier for DongRaeGu, as we've seen him basically get his expansions a couple seconds earlier, pretty much the entire game, actually. But we do have the Hydralisk Den coming in for DongRaeGu as well. He'll be able to make that switch into the Hydralisk. A little bit more range than the Roaches, attack a little bit faster, do more damage, but a lot less health and much more vulnerable to those fungals. The positioning becomes more important as this game goes on.
And this is where you can afford it, right? You know, you're maxed out, you have a little bit of a bank, you can now start transitioning onto that Hydralisk Den, whereas we saw Sasquatch previously, he wasn't maxed out. He needed more army to deal with his opponent. That would have been difficult. So, maxed out versus maxed out here. The banks are going to start to accrue, and DongRaeGu just goes for a small counter-insurgency here with these Roaches to try and see what he can deal in terms of damage, which is a very, very smart move for him because his opponent's army is all the way over the other side of the map being kept eye on by this Overseer.
Yeah, it's a great way to pull your opponent's army back.
Yeah.
The lack of anti-air in these compositions until the Hydralisks come out. So nice. And look, going for the Queens as well. If you can shut down the injects, prevent that incredibly valuable larva resource, as we'd mentioned, it becomes more difficult because as these players start to trade these Roaches away, they want to build those higher tech units, those Infestors and those Hydralisks, but it's so dangerous if your army supply gets too low before you can actually push those high-tech units out.
Kind of surprised that we haven't seen a Hive morph in for, I would say, Life more than anything, since he was at 2-2 for a while. He has taken a little bit of damage, though, admittedly, here, so maybe that will force him away from it. He's also going for his Hydralisk Den as well. So his composition, both these compositions are going to be almost identical. We even have 7 Infestors to 7 Infestors, and DongRaeGu takes the initiative and starts his Hive before Life. Life could have got that a little bit quicker.
Yeah, this is actually pretty interesting, as you'd stated, because he's getting the later Hydralisk Den, so later Hydralisk range, later Hydralisk speed, and instead of putting that gas into the Hive, he gets out a few more Infestors. So I feel like if DRG tries to make a switch into something like Ultralisks, for example, he's going to have a little bit more difficulty actually trading that supply into them. So I feel like this Hive's probably more so going to be for the upgrades, especially since he doesn't have any melee attack upgrades anyway.
Yeah, I just want to see that 3-3, man. Yeah. I just want to see that 3-3 come out and be able to brutalize anything that's left at 2-2 if Life leaves that, because again, his Hive is quite late here. DongRaeGu again manages to slip in with just 5 roaches and starts going to work on a few drones. He's already killed off 14, so not too bad a trade here for DongRaeGu. I mean, roaches at this point, they're for free, man.
Yeah, well, it's what we talked about before this game even started, Kalair. It's just the non-stop aggression, these players throwing units at each other left and right, and it's almost surprising to see that Life hasn't been able to get that same amount of units in to really do that damage. So it's a great way for DRG to keep his opponent away, but Life getting closer and closer to his opponent's base. We could see an engagement. This ramp, a pretty dangerous spot to fight on with all these Infestors on the field.
Very dangerous, you're right. And if a fungal growth lands on clumped Infestors, then you are going to have a horrible time. Look how well clumped up the Infestors are for Life. If they get hit by a fungal growth, it's got to be very, very careful about where he takes that fight. Oop.
Yeah, it's a bit of a dance there. Neither player really willing to commit, but now the Roaches are coming in for Life, trying to get a position. There's the Fungals, Kalaris.
Oh, wow, those Fungals landed over the entire army. Meanwhile, though, we have Life trying to step forwards with his Infestors, landing over a lot of those Roaches as well. But look how well DongRaeGu has chained those Fungals on that army. DongRaeGu has executed this so fantastically and takes a massive army supply advantage.
The positioning for that fight was so good. Life had peeled off a few Roaches at the same time, but DRG doing so well for himself, and Life did have the bank. He's immediately remaxing. Both players are getting the 3-3. However, we have a couple of Vipers coming in for DongRaeGu. Very interesting, we might see use of Blinding Cloud to perhaps reduce the amount of the army that can fight at any one point for Life. But both players remaxing on mostly the same army composition.
But because it was so cost efficient for DongRaeGu, look at how much bank he still has. Those Fungals, you hear the word amazing Fungals all the time, but it landed over the whole army. There was nothing that wasn't green. It was crazy.
And the other cool thing about them is, just aside from the damage, when you prevent the army from repositioning itself, that arc and spread that DongRaeGu was able to get was so nice. And the 3-3 upgrade is even going to finish a little bit faster for the MVP Zerg player, getting Burrow, adding on Spires, both players going for Spires. I think it'll be really interesting to see how exactly these Vipers get used. Maybe abducts on the Infestors. It's not something that happens as much in this matchup that we really see too often.
And it's always weird when you get this Spire versus Spire transition, because if in the past it used to be straight to Broodlords, and if you did that, you have like +3 Carapace, +0 Broodlings attacking each other, and like they never die and they just last forever. I don't think we'll end up seeing that just yet, but that's the weird thing about ranged mid-games. It doesn't really lead to a whole lot of power later on, so you get these odd situations, indeed.
Yeah, the upgrades really don't translate into the high tech since the ranged attack upgrades, there's nothing you can use those for. Does get to pick off a couple of Overlords, really nice there, and actually contributes again. Having to rebuild those Overlords also counts as that bank. But we have another engagement going down, and this spread for DRG, nice, and the Blinding Clouds being used on the Hydralisks and Roaches.
Yeah, the Fungals and Blinding Clouds there for Life. Catching a lot of those Hydralisks was really, really nice, but look at the coverage of the Blinding Clouds on those Hydralisks there by DongRaeGu. Life has taken a supply lead, but at the same time, DongRaeGu has a massive, massive bank. If he just falls back and resupplies, he'll be okay for now.
Yeah, actually, the only thing he's really missing right now is a little bit of that larva. He immediately spent all that he had available, and you're right, he does have that bank. Just needs to be a bit careful. This is one of the very few weak periods after that fight where you just need a little bit of time to spend that money in remax. We see the Vipers coming in, trying to restore that energy, consuming that hatchery. Both players been sticking on this 4-base versus 4-base. The +3-3 was complete for DRG at some point during the end of that fight. Life now has evened it up. That's it. It's all down to the positioning. There's no more upgrade advantages for these players, and it also comes down to the micro of these Vipers.
How many infestors are we going to have out? It looks like the numbers will be very even eventually once these have hatched. So it'll be 10 infestors to 10 infestors. DongRaeGu, with 8 out currently, will have a slight energy advantage going into that fight. But still, you're right. The positioning is key. If someone slips, if someone doesn't get the right location to take that fight in, then they will die 9 times out of 10.
And also just, to point out, the worker count very similar between these players, which means the army supply is so close. This is such an even setup between the players. It really comes all down to the micro, to the engagement, and they're getting spread out. It looks like there could be a big fight here, Caleres.
And they're posturing. Will Life commit? If he does, well, it looks like he is going to. This is not too bad an engagement here for DongRaeGu, but again, green stuff everywhere. Not only Blinding Clouds, but also Fungal Growths. With those two in combination, there's not a lot of damage being done up until in between here, and DongRaeGu with the better concave, with the better positioning. Life took a risk going into that area, and DongRaeGu prevailed.
DongRaeGu had some of those units on the high ground as well, really helped to spread out the effect of those fungal growths and the blinding clouds. You also have to consider his army being slightly more spread out. Aside from the damage and the arc of fire, it's really not being able to cover as much with that AoE.
Oh, this is a good position here for DongRaeGu. Unless he gets completely sandwiched, those infestors at the back there for Life were very, very vulnerable. He was forced into this. Although, that being said, he's trying to break this with these roaches. Life trying to move forwards, but the Hydralisks are dishing out a lot of damage from the back there. DongRaeGu, with the reinforcing roaches as well, is going to crush this location. Life has very, very little left here in game number 1. GG. DongRaeGu will take game number 1. Oh, back and forth. Back and forth.
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly what we thought it would be. DongRaeGu just really just pushing, balling out there. And it came down to the positioning for a lot of those fights. There were so many battles where even with the fungal growth and the blinding cloud, the army being spread out just a little bit more means you need a few more blinding clouds to cover the whole thing. And even with the one fight that Life was able to take, DongRaeGu had so much success prior that he had the bank, as you'd stated, to just very quickly replenish that army supply. That was
a tough situation for Life, because everything he was doing, his opponent was always one step ahead without him necessarily even knowing. Like the third base, the fourth base, all of these little small advantages, even with also DongRaeGu going for small attacks with 5 roaches. That is very disposable. Did we see that from Life? He tried. There was one moment where he tried, but it was shut down instantly. DongRaeGu and ZVZ, really, really good.
It's a funny point that you make, always being 1 or 2 steps ahead. Even the hatchery first versus the versus the pool first.
In the very beginning.
It's those tiny things. He got the natural fast, we got the third and the fourth, and I do think Life made a couple of great plays. He brought the pressure at just the right time to keep those bases from being saturated, but it was really DongRaeGu having this plan evolve faster, develop faster, and he really just played on just enough of a level above his opponent. But with that in mind, I do think Life still has a great chance to tie this series up. It was very, very close. All the way throughout, really.
Yeah, as do I. I mean, the mid stages of that game, if Life had just made 1 or 2 like little key movements, it could have gone his way. It certainly could have. But DongRaeGu, don't want to take anything away from him. Game number 1, stable, calm, collected, always that one step ahead. Really, really nice EVZ from that man.
Yeah. And now we are here on map number 2. It is going to be Yansu, where we could potentially have our next group stage advancement decided.
We certainly could. So, without further ado, guys, let's introduce these players. Spawning down to the bottom left-hand corner are Red Zerg, representing StarTale as well as Korea. Give it up for Life.
Looking for revenge here in this series, trying to bring himself back up. No easy feat versus this guy who played pretty much immaculately that last series.
Yeah, he really did. A very, very strong game number 1 from this man. Spawning as the blue Zerg, representing MVP as well as Korea. Give it up for DongRaeGu.
Great opening to this match, displaying fantastic macro versus Life. A player who, well, He's going for some early pool play.
What did I say, man, at the very beginning of the series? He's had more success with it than DongRaeGu has in the past, so let's see if he can make it work here, Nathanius.
It's not even a bad choice strategically. It's one of those situations, he says, well, I have this game, I'm down in this series, And this is a situation where you can reset the pace. Once you set the momentum for a series, it's so difficult to get back on track, get the game going for yourself. And with an early pool play like this is Live saying, yes, I want to take back control of this series. Can he make it happen, though? DRG opening up pool first, not being quite as greedy as he was on Belshire Vestige.
Yeah, that's a very, very good question that you asked there, Nathanius. Can Life make this work? DongRaeGu has a pretty good setup to be able to deal with this. You know, Life maybe was expecting a hatchery first, but on a map like Yonsu, when you go into a game, a ZVZ on this map, you always have in the back of your mind, very, very short distance from base to base. Can't really be going too crazy hatchery first with that.
Yeah, I mean, he saw the Lings coming, actually canceled his natural expansion, so he knows that Life is bringing the heat. Can he hold on, though? That's the real question. He's been mining his own gas. If he survives this, he'll have speed out. He has an opportunity to go for a counterattack or counter all-in, but here come the Lings. Kalaris, does he have what it takes to hold off this early pool play?
Queen's about to hatch. Actually, it's quite far away now that I look at it, with those Zerglings about to hatch here, but they're hatching right next to us. Life has got a really good position next to those Zerglings initially. Once they end up popping, doing a little bit of damage to it, but forcing those drones now to reposition themselves. This is a lot of Lings here from Life.
Yeah, those drones being forced to pull the fisticuffs against these Zerglings, trying to knock them back. Important to keep in mind the overall drone count. DRG can't afford to lose a few of these as long as he holds the attack. And now with the Queen, he's getting that position that he needs. He's managed to stave this off for now.
Wow, during all of that, it was actually really impressive to see Life focusing down the Zerglings, whilst all the drones were mingled in there. There was a point where there was 12 Zerglings out against 1, whilst all of that had gone in the middle. Of course, well, we will have a pause here. Not, that wasn't certain, but...
yeah.
But now, if we look at the drone counts here, we have 11 for Life and 12 for DongRaeGu. The gas is slightly in favor of Life, and then both of them have a Queen out. So there's very, very close in this.
Well, that's what I was saying. If he holds this attack off, his Zergling speed is on the way. There's not really any gas to get that going for Life on the other side of the field. So he has a great opportunity to go for the counter pressure, go for the counter harass, or he can just take the slight advantage of having that earlier speed, take his drones off of gas, get his expansion, and both players could just play this out completely evenly because we also saw Life going right back into the drone production after that assault.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, I missed that the speed was already on the way for DongRaeGu there. So that is certainly a large opportunity for him once this gets unpaused and good to go. But as we said, Life goes to what he knows very, very well and tries to make it work. But DongRaeGu has a good opportunity here.
Yeah, and you know, he didn't go without any losses, but it's that situation where when the opposing Zerg player goes for a pool that fast, you say, well, I don't actually have any Zerglings, I don't have my Queen, but because they built the pool so early, they don't have as many drones as you. It's okay to lose 1 or 2 here and there, as long as you don't really fall below their number, which he didn't do. He's only ahead a single drone, for example, at this point in time. So it's not the most massive lead, but he hasn't necessarily fallen to any significant disadvantage, especially with that speed on the way.
I'm actually really enjoying the CVZ so far, I've got to say.
Yeah.
I actually really, it's weird because I really enjoy casting ZVZ, but when I play ZVZ myself, I actually don't want to be playing ZVZ. I have such a hard time playing this matchup. It's very, very different. Do you end up playing any ZVZ yourself, or is it just Terrence for you?
You know, I do play Zerg on occasion.
Yeah?
My ZVZs often amount to, I see this type of attack coming, and I'm just like, there's no way. It's usually when they get that speed that it's so difficult because oftentimes, you know, you try to expand, you try to play the economic play and expand, and you sometimes have to force your hatchery to cancel. And sometimes it's very tactical to decide when you want to cancel it. Do you want to let the opposing Zerglings chew on it? And that's something that DRG technically could have done, but he wanted to get those units out as fast as possible. He needed the resources, so I guess to answer your question, no, I lose a lot of ZVZs if I get hit with that kind of pressure. Dude,
whenever I see anything being thrown at me in ZVZ, I'm like, I just see the units come out, I'm like, oh, okay, GG. I'm not even gonna bother. ZVZ is tough, man.
Just like to play those maps where you can block off like Star Station. Buy yourself as much time and play gasless.
Yeah, dude. The amount of times where I've seen an attack coming and I've been like, oh, I actually have no units. It's time to throw down 7 evolution chambers and make the best wall of all time, which is actually pretty legit sometimes.
Yeah.
It works out. It does work out. All right, so we are just waiting here, guys, for Life to get sorted out in this game. It's very important for him to feel comfortable in a situation where you may go down to the lower bracket. You don't want that to happen. Life is a player that could certainly bring this back after being at a one-game deficit.
Definitely.
So he doesn't want to risk anything.
Yeah, it's a great point. And also to consider, you know, hopefully everything was okay throughout the entirety of this game. Maybe he didn't realize something was wrong until after that push. So doesn't want to get thrown off for the rest of this map, especially as you said, if he falls down, his opponent moves on to group stage number 2, just basically can say, okay, well, I'm pretty much done for today. Come back, play the rest tomorrow, get into that prize pool. But it looks like we're going to have to do a remake or a restart of a computer here. As
That's fine. Yeah. We have our resume from replay, which is all good. Apparently there was a problem with his mouse, so we just restart things here as it's important. Well, actually, yeah, not only is it very important that we do keep everything as stable as possible for these players, but also, if they restart amidst what was going on there, oh my god, that is going to be some chaos.
Yeah, that's a difficult situation to have to restart in, but mouse, very important tool for playing StarCraft. Those of you tuning in.
Kind of important.
Kind of important.
Just a little bit.
Hopefully that does get resolved sooner than later. But I have to ask, you know, when you kind of look at it from Life's position, he lost that first game, that macro style. Both players kind of were able to get away with what they wanted to do. Then he goes for this aggressive playing game 2, ends up pretty much at best breaking even. How is Life, how do you feel as a Zerg player in this situation where you're trying to reset the tempo of the series and you just basically get backhanded like that?
Yeah, it's tough. That is really, really tough. Life has some consolidation to make up for. He really does. He has to somehow now try and find a way to deal with what DongRaeGu is going to throw him. Because DongRaeGu, as we said at the beginning, he's an opportunist. He will exploit you if he knows you, if he feels you. He knows, he has played so many ZVZs that he knows the current progress of his opponent's gas as opposed to his gas. He knows that the Lings came in at a particular time to say, yeah, that's an 8 pool, that's an 9 pool, I know what's going on. And then from there, does he use this speed as aggression? Does he do it? I think probably.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea, especially considering that DongRaeGu being up 1-0 in this series, he's got a little bit of a I guess you say, a cushion that he can fall back on if something like that doesn't work out quite as well. Because as we already saw in game number 1, DongRaeGu very comfortable with his macro game, especially with how well he handled Life's roaches, especially with getting the positioning. This map, I feel, Yansu, there's a few more open areas to engage in. It's not quite as windy as Belshir Vestige, so it might be easier for Life to get the positioning in the later phase of the game, too.
It certainly could be, you're right. But before we get back into game number 2, guys, we have a little word from Mr. Redeye and Smix.
Yes, thank you very much. We thought we'd just give you a very quick update as to what was going on. Smix, you bound in there and talked good Korean and found out what was going on with Life.
Well, Life mentioned this to me earlier before, that even when he was on his last match on the main stage, he mentioned that his mouse kept disconnecting. So he just felt there was something wrong with the connection with the PC itself. So he actually felt bad, though. He thought that it would take too much time to interchange the PCs. And he was like, I'll just finish it. I feel bad. It's going to take too long. And I was like, are you kidding? You're the priority. You're the player. So we cater to you. So I was like, don't worry about it. We'll just resume from replay. We'll bring back the computer you were using backstage. And he was like, oh, we can do that? And I was like, yeah. So that's what happened.
Yeah, it's almost like magic we can do that. We should explain that the guys actually play with SSDs and they're literally transfer from backstage to front stage when they come out here. So it shouldn't take more than a few minutes, but we thought we'd just give you a quick update as to what was going on. But for now, let's go back to the commentary team with Nathanius and Kalaris.
Thanks very much. All right. Hopefully in just a little bit, we shall get into game number 2 here again between Life and DongRaeGu. And again, it's really cool to see these guys playing one another. With the results that they've had in the past against each other, with that grand final that we saw at Iron Squid number 2. I mean, let's not forget that tournament was, at the time, one of the most stacked tournaments of all time.
Oh, yeah.
So you have Life and DongRaeGu, who were the finalists. And for Life to bring it back all the way from 3 games to 4 in the end, that was something crazy. So he could do it here. He could quite easily make it up.
Well, that's just it. They've both been in a lot of high-pressure situations. Yeah. They're both champions. It's not like them playing each other in this this open bracket stage is any more stressful than playing in a final of an MLG or a GSL.
This could be the final of this tournament, right? Like DongRaeGu versus Life, and we're in the open bracket. It's very, very strange.
It's a good point.
Yeah. So and DongRaeGu, the previous champion of New York, That's such good names going into the open bracket. I would be very surprised if both of them didn't advance from this bracket itself. The loser going down and falling down to the lower bracket, yeah, sure, they'll lose this series, but they still have a massive opportunity in that lower to advance on through.
Yeah, that's actually a really great point to make, guys. Whoever loses this series, not out of it just yet. There's still a second chance. This is the winner's bracket. We can see Life just getting himself situated. Hopefully, everything confirmed to be good. We're in the lobby to recover this game from the replay. So, I guess my question to you, Kalaris, since I know you like to play Zerg, in Life's shoes, what would you do trying to bring this? What's your follow-up? Is Life just going to try to play greedy behind this and try to recover? Is he going to bring a second level of aggression? Is he even going to try to take that hatchery?
My assumption here going into the next position is panic. It's going to be difficult. But if anybody can recover it, it's going to be Life. I may somehow get the defense set up and have your queen be extremely efficient, control it well, because you do not want that queen to die. Oh, you do not want that queen to die. If that queen dies to this speedling attack, then what lava do you have to deal with any more extra Zerglings that he throws at you? You don't have time to get down a Baneling Nest. You absolutely need that queen to survive if this follow-up comes.
Very good point. So we're in the game actually, getting ready to kick this off once again. And you make a great point, Kalaris. If any other Zerg, you imagine any Zerg in Life's position, he's the one that can do it. There's no one else I'd rather put in instead of him to try to make this work. So we're gonna find out. Both players appear to be ready. Life, we can see him in his booth. Hopefully computer working fine. We're counting down. We're back into this Zerg versus Zerg as the Lings were just getting cleaned up, Kalaris.
I love that countdown. It's awesome. But anyway, this Zergling here is going to die. And now, speed is on the way for DongRaeGu. We will have it on the way in just a little bit for Life as well. It's going to be around the 20 to 30 seconds slower. But that's a big window for DongRaeGu. Is he going to use it?
Well, he's sending his Zerglings across the map. Important to note, there's 2 Lings actually tucked in the main base of DongRaeGu from Life. A nice little maneuver, but doesn't manage to grab anything with it. Delaying a little bit of mining time is always nice, getting some scouting information. He can see that the gas mining stopped for DongRaeGu, but he actually put the drones right back on. So I'm wondering what he's planning here. The Queen's trying to come and block that ramp, like you said, Kalaris.
Very, very good. He just doesn't want one to die. Oh, but he doesn't get the full block. Those Zerglings got a little bit more surface area, of course. They wouldn't end up dying if they were staying there, but an extra block there would have made it even easier, actually, for him to defend.
Yeah, but he does get the full scouting information, sees that Life is getting speed, also spotted that Baneling Nest beginning its production, so he has all of the information available to him. At the same hand, DongRaeGu starting his hatchery and his natural expansion and getting his own Baneling Nest. I think this is a good position for DongRaeGu because Life, well, he's got a drone heading down to the natural, but I still feel that he's a little bit shaken up after that attack doesn't work, and there's still a drone or 2 lead for DongRaeGu as well.
Well, as I say, that Baneling Nest for Life, it went down straight after he had speed on the way. Why? Because he was so scared of that big Ling follow-up from his opponent. So important from him to get that down, but DongRaeGu is taking that advantage with that slightly earlier hatchery. He's sending Lings over as well. And I don't think he's going to get a whole lot done with them. I think Life is a capable enough player to be able to deal with this.
Yeah, it'd be tough. Life already has a good number of Zerglings. He's morphing some Banelings as well. That Speedling time we talked about, it's already past that window, wasn't that big. And now Life, he's in a position where he can slowly start to recover this. However, we do have some offensive Banelings being made by DongRaeGu. And as Life presses out of the field, this is a good opportunity for him to try to go for some sort of counterattack. I'm curious if he might flank with these Banelings. Yeah,
that overload for DongRaeGu was really, really important to just see when his opponent was moving out, but at the same time, he does now know that that is the case. The Banelings are trying to find something, but the Zerglings will do the finding. They'll try and kill off a queen. Banelings trying to defend for DongRaeGu behind all of that. Gets the queen kill. That's nice for him. Has to be careful about those Banelings.
Yeah, and actually getting inside the base of Life with these Zerglings. DongRaeGu doing a nice little bit of damage, not able to get anything out of hatchery. He does have a Baneling with this. His queens and Zerglings are blocking his own rip. He's getting on the middle line. Fantastic Baneling detonation. GG. DongRaeGu.
That's what you got to be careful of, man.
Dropping the hammer.
That was brutal there for Life. If you give DongRaeGu that opportunity, he will take it and he will kill you. And DongRaeGu now advances on to tomorrow's group stages. impressive play by him today.
Yeah, quite nice. Great way. We saw the decision-making come out when he first had that Overlord, spot the Zerglings moving across the field, cancel the hatchery, got just enough Zerglings to hold that pressure off, and then very wisely going for the counterattack. And I like that he tucked those Banelings in. If those Banelings have been forced to be canceled, suddenly you have this other huge problem of, well, how do you get through all of his lings? And especially with how it was able to deal with those Zerglings while defending simultaneously at home. DongRaeGu, this series, he was in the driver's seat the entire time.
He certainly was. He played that really, really well. He'd already had 2 ZVZs to warm up with throughout the day, so that was a small boon to him going into that. But just in general, DongRaeGu's ZVZ, very, very strong. And that means now we are left with very few series left for today. We have Hack versus Snoot to find out who is the second player advancing on in the upper bracket, as we already had San advancing on over Hack. And then we have Suppy and Sasquatch left to fight for the one spot to play against Life. So another guaranteed Zerg down there. But guys, without further ado, we can hear from our winner advancing on to tomorrow's group stage, Mr. DongRaeGu.
Hey guys, this is Smix. Congratulations to DongRaeGu for advancing to the group stages tomorrow. 이제 이승현 선수 엄청 잘하는 선수잖아요. 근데 제가 지난 그 드림핵 대회에서 이승현 선수와 인터뷰했을 때 이승현 선수가 저구전을 제일 싫어한다고 얘기했어요. 그래서 이 경기를 들어가면서 좀 그래도 자신 있었어요? 아니면 좀 어려울 거라고 예상했어요?
이거 바로 영어로 해도 돼요?
네?
영어로 바로 해도 돼요?
Okay, so he wants to answer in English, so let me tell you guys what I asked him. I told him that the last time I talked to Life at DreamHack Bucharest, Life told me that the matchup that he struggles the most in is ZVZ. So I told him, I asked him, did you feel uncomfortable going into this matchup, or were you confident? So he will answer.
I was new about his aggressive playstyle, so I want to take advantage each engagement. So it's a lot of work, yeah.
Okay, DongRaeGu. Well, you showed us that you had a very convincing win over Life. DongRaeGu, there's a question I want to ask, and I think many of you, at least on Twitter, have been tweeting about this particular topic. 영어로 질문 물어봐도 돼요? 그냥 일단 한국말로 질문 물어보고요. I'm gonna ask him about his hat. 동래구 선수 모자에 대해서 좀 얘기해 주세요. 지금 트위터랑 인터넷에서 해외 팬들이 다 모자에 대해서 얘기하고 있거든요. 그래서 그거에 대해서 좀 얘기해 주세요.
This hat, actually, my girlfriend gave to me, so it means lucky item for me. Yeah.
All right, DRG, I hope that your hat continues to bring you success into your tournament play tomorrow. Thank you very much for this interview, DRG. Guys, let's head over to the analysis desk.
Hello everybody, I'm here with the analysis screen in front of me once again. Game 1 was really back and forth. There was a lot of fights. It is very hard to break down in a couple of minutes, but what we can do is look how the nail in the coffin was planted here for DRG against Life. Life decided to open up with an 8 pool. It is a cool build, it's successful if your opponent isn't going for a spawning pool first. It can still work, but it's not as successful. So what ends up happening here is with the 8 pool, they come in, the Zerglings come in, and the goal here, if we pause it really fast, if you look at the unit tab, it is, or the worker tab, however you want to look at it, 15 to 9. So if DRG takes 0 damage, he's massively in the lead. He not only has a queen on the way much faster than his opponent, he also has gas. He's going to have Zergling speed. It's going to help him out a ton. So the goal here for Life is to do as much damage as possible and try to keep the Lings alive for as long as they can. So if we look in here, he actually surrounds one of the eggs, gets 1 Zergling. It's a good start. It's better than nothing. And from this point out, he's trying his best. But what doesn't happen is the damage needed to put him in the lead by taking such an early risk. At the end of the fight, DongRaeGu, by the way, great drone control throughout all of it, really minimizing his losses. I think that was a really important factor in this. But towards the end, if we look at the unit count, or the drone count in a couple of seconds here, it's 13 to 10, 12 to 10. So 12 to 11 by the end of it. So it's actually very close. It was almost successful. But the biggest difference is that a queen had already got a lava inject off. Zergling's speed has already started. So from this position, DRG's in great shape, and as the game resumes, as it was broken down before, if we just fast forward it, the small little advantages, for example, 19 supply to 26, he's got one more Overlord, he's got Zergling speed faster, he has his Baneling Nest faster, he starts his Zergling production faster. So all these things, even though it's a very small and only seconds ahead, resulted in the win, because as we can see, towards the end, when the fight actually comes in here, Witcher spot, I mean, DRG spotted everything, he knew exactly where he was in the game. But when the fight came in, Life was seconds away from defending it. Really could have gone either way. So if you fast forward it to the end, you actually see everything just a little bit faster. 10 links to 2, Zergling speed's finished, it hasn't, Baneling's more faster, and there's just generally more units out here. Bigger supply for DRG over Life as soon as the units keep on popping. And what we ended up seeing was a very easy DRG win. Seconds mean everything in a game like StarCraft 2. And as we see here, here's the end. Unfortunately, Life decided to maybe try a risk, go for a counterattack, maybe it can work. Unfortunately not. So DRG is another player that's made it in to the main tournament, which will be played out tomorrow. So that's it on the analysis screen. Over to Red-Eye on the main stage.
Yes, thank you very much, Apollo. Great analysis once more to break it down and show you exactly how DRG has advanced through to the round of 16. That'll be tomorrow, the start of the group games, Group A, B, C, and D. There's loads of stuff going on in the background here as well. It's been great coming back to New York at Comic-Con, and we've got more action coming your way. One more game, in fact, tonight. But before we get there, just a quick word about one of our sponsors. If you aren't aware, we are sponsored by RaidCall. It's fantastic communication software that you can download free of charge at raidcall.com. And also, just some extra special stuff going on this weekend as well. You can actually join the RaidCall channel at channel 1997. And in that channel, we are actually streaming all of the live show from New York Comic Con right now, and you can discuss it live in the channel, so it's a pretty cool feature in there. It's also a free feature that you can use yourself. You can create your own groups, your own chat channels and what have you, and you can get your friends in there, and you can embed a stream of your choice as well. So if it's not this particular one, maybe you want the point of view, or you want MLG, or whatever you want in there, it's absolutely fine by us. You can download RaidCall free of charge. We'll also be doing some giveaways over the next few days where you can win some cool prizes courtesy of our other sponsor, HyperX. There's a headset to be given away in there as well. You have to join the channel. So download it, raidcall.com, and pop into channel #1997 and join us for the Intel Extreme Masters New York City. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, our final match will determine the last player in the round of 16.
This is it. That mighty thing. That thinks, blinks, and winks. You can dress it up, you can dress it down. You can even bedazzle it and make it loud. It comes in black, it comes in white. It comes in orange. What a sight. You can spin it and make it dance. Anything is possible when given the chance. It can say everything about you, or very little at all. It can fit in your pocket, on a desk, or on a wall. And it comes in sizes from big to small. From tablets to smartphones to all-in-ones. It can be used for work, for fun, and even both with the 2-in-1. But there's something meaningful beyond the bling that makes them run and do their thing. It's quite a special, hard-to-see part. The brain, the brawn, and the beating heart. And if you manage to set the rest aside, you'll come to realize the most important part is inside.
Professional grade communication tool. The choice of professional teams. Perfect stream viewing experience. Chosen by online streamers. Easy to use voice messenger service. Chosen by over 12 million gamers.
Communication is always vital when competing in tournaments. Winning a match requires perfect coordination. You cannot win by yourself.
RaidCall. Communication for winners.